Okay, so continue our exploration of Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. Talk so much about this, but it just seems to be useful or beneficial. So I'll keep. This is the last section on the 4 tetrads of Anapanasati, of mindfulness of breathing, the section on Dhamma, Dhammanupassana, Satipatthana. So these foundation of mindfulness concerning Dhammas, and oftentimes it's translated as mind objects, mental objects, but I think it's probably useful to be considering it as a, say, like Dhamma categories. So looking or observing or contemplating things through the lens of Dhamma, say, as opposed to through the lens of our particular desires, aversions, fears, agitations, proliferations, just grounding ourselves in a Dhamma perspective. And like in the actual Satipatthana Sutta, the categories or perspectives that the Buddha lifts up as a basis of contemplation, like the 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregates of being, the 5 khandhas, 6 sense bases, 7 factors of awakening, 4 noble truths, so that these are perspectives or Dhamma themes that one can be up to consider, contemplate. It's really helpful because when we see things more in accordance with Dhamma, then the heart cools, settles. In the discourse on mindfulness of breathing, then the Buddha begins the section, and of course, each tetrad has 4 different or themes. So that the first one is anicca, aniccanupassi, asasi samiti sikati. Training thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating impermanence. So that's a lifting up that theme of impermanence, and as a basis for contemplating Dhamma. Of course, the other is viraga, dispassion, nirodha, patinisika, relinquishment. But the sense of anupassi is translated here as contemplating. Anupassi is also, say, like observing, reflecting on, looking at, as well. So it's this sense of looking on our experience through the lens of anicca, impermanence, change, and of course the Ajahn Chah would pick up the theme of uncertainty, unsure, not a sure thing, as an expression of anicca as well. That sense of, or as Ajahn Jeff translates it as inconstancy, because say like nicca means to be constant, and anicca is that which is not constant. It changes, it modulates, it arises, it ceases, comes into being, it passes away, and it's important that we contemplate that, because we tend to be upset, sad, disappointed when something pleasant that we like changes, but we also tend to be excited and relieved when something unpleasant is impermanent. And of course, then we have our preferences. We want the bad things to quickly be impermanent, and then the things that are pleasing to us, then we want its impermanence to not display itself. We want it to be constant. And as long as we're fighting against reality and fighting against the things truly are, then we're not actually very happy or peaceful. So to be contemplating impermanence, and the breath, of course, is it is displaying impermanence all the time, so that we breathe in breath arises, it establishes itself, it ceases. And out breath arises, it establishes itself, it ceases. That is the nature of impermanence, arising and ceasing, coming into being and passing away. And the breath is displaying that. And so that mindfulness of breathing is a really very direct means of experiencing this truth of impermanence, of anicca. And and this truth is something that the Buddha said, whether Buddhas appear in the world or don't appear in the world, all compounded things are impermanent, and and the duty of a Buddha is to know it, to see it, to understand it, to point it out, to clarify it, to elucidate it. That is the function of a Buddha, pointing to impermanence as a doorway into this path of liberation, so that we just taking the in-breath and the out-breath and recognizing, this very point of our observing and contemplating the experience of the breath arising and ceasing is the opportunity to to contemplate and to realize the truth of anicca, of impermanence, uncertainty, unsure, inconstancy, and it's that Cha once said that they say this one word, anicca, contains all the teachings of the Buddha, which is a really beautiful statement. In that it isn't as if we have to, okay, anicca, now let's go on to something else and go on to bigger and better things. But it's more, are we willing to come back and really reflect on anicca, this sense of impermanency, and this inconstancy, and also what is our response to that? What's our feeling towards it? Because it's contemplating impermanence can be really disconcerting, because we want things to be stable. We want things to be sure. I want things to be sure. I want it to be certain, and it keeps being unsure and uncertain and inconstant and changing, and it's a frustration there. Or we contemplate impermanence, and it can be incredibly reassuring. It's wonderful that everything is impermanent. Like if just in terms of the breath, I mean, how comfortable would it be? How pleasant would it be to just have a constant in-breath? How long could you put up with that? And just try it, just right now. Breathing in. Start to gag. And so it's just this, it's as much as we would like things to be constant and permanent and stable and certain, that isn't how nature is. That isn't how any part of nature is. And whether it displays itself and like there's the ridiculous, minute kind of measuring of how short, how impermanent a mind moment is. It's just so quick, so fast. Arising and ceasing, or just the arising and ceasing of a world system, a galaxy. I mean, it's just billions and billions of years, but it's all impermanent, and to be able to contemplate that impermanence and recognize, again, it's sort of like recognizing this impermanence as a doorway into truth, or this inconstancy, this sense of changing nature of things. And it's at that point of change that we can see, get an insight into Dhamma and an insight into relinquishment, because it's that, say, the flavor of the Dhamma is, say, the flavor of release, of letting go of freedom. And as long as we're not acknowledging, not recognizing impermanence, then we're missing the point, and that sense of having anicca as like where we fall back to, where we return to, where we root ourselves, ground ourselves in our meditation, in our contemplation, in our investigations of Dhamma. And of course, anicca is also, it is it's one of three universal characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and they're one and the same thing in the sense that, but anicca is it tends to be a bit more tangible and a bit more maybe easily observable, but it is that display of anicca that is helpful to turning to and lifting up for our contemplation. So that coming back to anicca and turning to that point of where we experience anicca, it's just the breath coming in, the breath going out. And because it's at that point that we start to, because on a certain level, our material things displaying their impermanence, or even world systems displaying their impermanence, doesn't hit home so much as our own sense of self, our sense of me, our feeling of emotion and our thought, what we consider our mind, that is impermanent, and we attach to that. We want it to be stable, or even the quality of, say, of knowing, of awareness, of mindfulness. Here we are trying to develop mindfulness, and how constant were we? As much as we wanted to, as much as we set an intention to do it, it follows its own laws of change, and so that what we can do is observe, what we can do is contemplate, and so that impermanence gives us that sense of change, and particularly that we taking the breath as a focal point, observing, contemplating, attending to that rhythm of the in-breath and the out-breath, but then also recognizing at that point of observing, there's also, say, the mind itself, our own feeling, our projections, our own say, confidence or doubts, those are displaying their impermanence also. And so we get to contemplate that and to recognize it, understand it, and ideally to be kind of letting go, not in the sense of letting go in terms of just giving up and, oh, well, it's all impermanent, what the heck. But it's more like letting go into clarity and a confidence that, yes, this is the way things truly are. And so that looking at that point or contemplating that point of impermanence, and that's where we start to understand Dhamma. So that's where, like Ajahn Chah saying, yeah, you want to be contemplating this point of the experience of impermanence and change, because that's where Dhamma will display it. So he said it's like, if you've got a fire, sort of flares up in the kitchen. So you've got a kitchen fire, Well, you don't carry water into the bedroom and start throwing water around. You take it to the kitchen where the fire is, and you start trying to put that fire out. And you get your extinguisher and you point it at the fire, and you sort of wander around pointing at it, you're squirting it everywhere. It's pay attention to the points that are important and impermanence. And at this in-breath and out-breath this is really important. Or it's like that, the old joke of the drunk who was out on the street, sort of looking around. He's underneath the kind of like the lamppost out on the street, the street light, and he's kind of out there and looking. And somebody comes along and asks, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for my keys. And so he said, well, I'll give you a hand. So I dropped his keys, and so he's helping him out. Finally, he said, well, where did you drop them? He said, well, I dropped them by my house. I was trying to get in my house and drop them. So, well, why are you looking here? I said, well, there's more light here. House is dark. I can't see over there. So, but that's exactly the sort of thing we tend to do. What's the convenient, comfortable, more pleasant way of practicing, but we look in the wrong places. So this sense of going back to impermanence and that sense of the change and how important that is. I remember a story of when he was a young monk and traveling with friends of his, and as a young monk you go to religious sites and jetties and temples, places of pilgrimage sites, and sometimes you go and they're these old beautiful temples, and one of the monks sort of saying, "Oh, look, it's all cracked, and like it's this wonderful revered deity site is cracking." And Ajahn Chah said, if it wasn't cracked, there wouldn't be a Buddha. And there's a nip it in the bud, because the feeling, of course, is you want these places of reverence and beauty to last, but the reality is they are impermanent, and to be able, and it is that display of impermanence that is the key or the doorway for the Buddha to understand the true nature of things. And that's what Buddhas point out. They point out the nature of truth. And it's one of the idioms that comes up in the suttas over and over again, that is the indication of liberating insight in the Pali, yatha bhuta jnana dasana, that knowledge and vision of the way things truly are. And that's your key to liberation, it's your key to peace. So that willingness to look at the way things truly are. And anicca is your doorway. And so there's, the mindfulness of breathing, Anapanasati Sutta, is that's the first basis of insight, is that Nichanupasi asatsi sahaniti sikati, training thus in contemplating impermanence, breathing out, contemplating impermanence. And as I said, that impermanence is also it's like a catchphrase or an overall that you holding a placeholder to recognize the other aspects of characteristics of dukkha and anatta, and that sense of change is important to contemplate, because it's like there's a stability to even though you say one contemplates impermanence and change in constancy, that doesn't mean that we are shaken by that. It actually lays a foundation for what is unshakable. And the image that Ajahn Chah used, this contemplating of impermanence as displaying the characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, is waves. Like this, watching waves coming into the shore, and I'm actually by the sea, so that is relevant, and I can hear the waves right now. There's been last couple of days have been kind of windy, which is very pleasant. But the waves coming in, and well, it says that waves are that they arise, they cease, they come in, and whether they're big waves, whether they're small waves, they come in, they hit the shore, they go back. Come in, hit the shore, go back out. And so it's like that anicca, dukkha, anatta, rising, coming into being and ceasing. And the shore, Ajahn Chah says, is our awareness, knowledge, understanding. And that is your unshakable ground that you keep returning to. So that, breathing in, contemplating impermanence, breathing out, contemplating impermanence. But it's the knowing of the breath, the knowing of the mind, the knowing of experience that allows that impermanence to manifest and to display itself and then to dissipate. And that change, that impermanence is there, is recognizable, but what we're also experiencing is the knowing, is that clarity, and returning to a stability of clarity, and getting entangled or getting disappointed or averse or excited, but it's just this contemplating impermanence. I breathe in, contemplating impermanence. I breathe out, and that sense of because one recognizes the pitfalls or the dangers of our delusions, and if one is not aware and careful and to a certain degree humbled by one's capacity for delusion, then we're really say samsara is a dangerous place. It's where it's always going to end up fraught with suffering. And it's actually that the definitions of a religious seeker is one who sees the danger in samsara, seeing the drawbacks, the pitfalls of samsara. And samsara is usually sort of, the world, or the world of rebirth, the world of arising and coming into being and passing away. But the word samsara, its literal meaning is just wandering on. And that's our minds keep wandering on. And we keep looking for something else that's going to be satisfying. Wandering on, looking for something else that's going to be secure. Wandering on, looking for something else that's going to be constant. Wandering on, looking for something else that's really going to satisfy. And we keep wandering on, and then we die, and then we do it again. And it's whether it's repeated over lifetimes or just moment to moment, it's still this wandering on. So to recognize we have this opportunity to take a stand. Contemplating impermanence, I breathe in. Contemplating impermanence, I breathe out. At this point of the breath, and at this simple truth or experience of impermanence. So to be being willing to pick that up and to reflect, to investigate, to take an interest, and to be, because it's that interest that is important, and again it's a doorway into seeing. The contemplation of impermanence is a doorway into seeing dukkha, which is impermanence of the nature to arise and cease. The Buddha, asking a rhetorical question, is that satisfying or is it unsatisfying? Is it dukkha or is it sukha? And the answer to the rhetorical question, it is dukkha. This is unsatisfactory. It is. If the world were really satisfactory, then it would please me all of the time. That ain't gonna happen. So it's just that recognizing dukkha, and it's not woe is me, everything's dukkha. It's look at that. That tends to be hidden. It tends to not display itself, so that it and it's not as if it's I mean, it is tangible. Our experience of dukkha is tangible in that sense of because dukkha it's painful. That hurts. That's unsatisfactory. That disappointment. I thought that object of desire was really going to satisfy. I thought that was going to work out and it was always going to be like this. And we feel that very directly. So that to attend to it, because again, our capacity for delusion is pretty amazing. So we put a spin on things really quickly. But in the same way that one is contemplating experience at that point of anicca, it's contemplating that sense of dukkha. And it's not, liberation through making yourself miserable. It's looking at things in their true nature, seeing things how and how it feels. Because that's also like Ajahn Chah would always say, the language of Dhamma is a language of feeling. It's the feeling tone of our experience is just so important to attend to, so that we do have this seeing, this being of repeating the same old patterns or delusions. It's worthy of being tired of. It's worthy of being the Pali word for that is nibbida. Nibbida is a really interesting word, because we'll tend to translate it as disenchantment, that sense of disenchantment. But a Bhikkhu Bodhi has been translating it as this sense of I'm trying to remember now. But it's like one loses the flavor for that kind of either excitement or fascination with the world, whether it's the fascination of through desire and delight, or fascination through kind of aversion and distaste. I mean, it's still a fascination, and it has its hooks that pull us in, hold us to it. So there's this sense of disenchantment, and to a certain degree in the Thai language, nibbida is kind of translated as kind of like boredom. It's being bored. We're fed up with sort of, it's that sense of even an onomatopoeic blah. So fed up and bored with it all. But what's really interesting is that quality of nibbida, like disenchanted can also kind of feel disheartened, or bored can be meaning just completely indifferent and disinterested. But the quality of nibbida as a spiritual emotion is one of stepping back with a coolness and brightness of heart. It's extremely wholesome mental state. It's a kusala citta. The mind is really and positive because it's seeing things in their true nature and not being hooked, not being entangled, not being deluded by. So this sense of seeing things in their true nature, turning to a cooling quality of that clear vision and knowledge of the way things truly are. And anicca is the doorway. So that seeing that more clearly. The sense of anatta is these are universal characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, and they're all of a piece. That which is impermanent, that which is unsatisfactory, is that worthy of saying, this is me, this is mine, this is myself? So, well, no, there's no logical basis to take that. And so that there is but it is an extension of logic. It's not so viscerally, doesn't display itself as tangibly. Impermanence is quite tangible. Dukkha is quite tangible. Not self requires a certain contemplation, investigation, and reflection. This experience, that even if it feels this is me, it's not like that, because this whole sense of self, what we call I and me and my, is really just a designation. It's just a construct that it has its usefulness, it has its function. It's not that we dissolve the sense of self and we experience non-self, and then we have no anchor, no center. It performs a useful function to have a certain continuity of being, but it is recognizing that it is a construct. In the same way, say like right now for me, today is Thursday. It's 4:45 a.m. It's Thursday, and for most everybody else, certainly in the Americas and as well, it's Wednesday, and what is has anybody ever pulled out and and shown you what a Wednesday actually is? Has you ever seen a Wednesday? Have you ever seen a Thursday? They're not. We talk about them, and it's useful, and it points to a certain truth or certain experience, but it doesn't have a solid existence. It doesn't have even all that stable of an existence, but it's useful. So the same thing in terms of self, these are helpful. It's a helpful designation, but you can't be deluded by it. Again, it's that impermanence that helps one to recognize it, understand it, see it more clearly, or say something like longitude and latitude. Those are useful designations. People are in different places on a map. I don't even know what my longitude and latitude here is in south of Thailand. But again, you could talk about it, and you can by saying it, you can come up with a concrete point on the map. But it's just there's a certain helpfulness to it, but it's not that solid. It's not that real. It's not that kind of concrete thing. And so then to be able to look on the experience of self in a similar way, recognizing when we say non-self, It's to see, oh, what I assumed to be self is a convenient assumption. It's a convenient designation. It's very useful. The world functions a bit more smoothly when, we've got, so we can designate it. So, okay, this is me here, and that's he out there. And so it's like Ajahn Chah sort of thing. You can't, the names, the designations are useful. You can't just sort of like everybody's a human being. When you want to get somebody's attention, you don't just say, hey, human. I mean, you need to say their name and to get their attention. And so but it's understanding and not being deluded by those designations and those aspects of experience. So contemplating impermanence, I breathe in. Contemplating impermanence, I breathe out. Sense of this truth of anicca, of being a doorway into the liberating truths of the Buddha's insight, and to make much of it. The breath is such a wonderful vehicle for calming and settling the mind, but also for insight and understanding and penetration. So I'll offer that for reflection this morning. I didn't get very far today, did I?